On December 5th, I was driving home and I saw this really remarkable sunset on the upper part of the valley, so I pulled over to the snowpark area and recorded a few minutes of the sunset for use as a backdrop. On December 28th, I went down to Eatonville. It was a really nice clear day, and I recorded this absolutely spectacular sunset on Mount Rainier that I'm going to be using in a couple of upcoming videos talking about the subject of DNA and Sasquatch and addressing a lot of misconceptions and also the personal story of how I got introduced to the subject of DNA and Sasquatch and how I learned about it. But since I was already most of the way down to the research area, I went a little bit further to meet a fellow named Brent Dill. And while we were talking in the research area, the same spot where I had heard the branch breaks and tree breaks earlier in this year, we started to hear some screams coming from about half a mile away from where we were. And as we were listening, it became apparent that these were just coyotes, but it wasn't immediately apparent. It took a while to realize that the forest was acting like an acoustic filter, stretching out and blending the sounds together so that what are distinct sounds when you're closer to the source blended together and sounded more like screams. At the end of this recording, I have audio that I recorded from much closer to where the coyotes actually were. You can hear the actual source, and you can hear the difference between the sounds close to the source and the sounds from half a mile away. Without narration, I'm going to be going through the spectrograph audio, and after I get an idea of what make up the sounds of my breathing and what make up the sounds of motion, I'm just going to click from sound to sound to sound of highlights of just the Coyote Serenade that we were listening to. I've removed all of the conversation and other incidental sounds as best as I could from this recording so I could turn up the sound quite a bit to make it easier for you to hear. Ordinarily, if I was going to record for several hours, I would put out recorders away from the camp that wouldn't pick up the conversation while we're talking in camp. I wasn't really planning to stay a lot of hours, but it is my habit when I go to this area to always have a recorder going, and this one was just clipped to my jacket, so it picks up a lot of breathing, it picks up a lot of motion. I was really only intending to record notes, but I always have a recorder going just in case something interesting happens. And in this case it did, so enjoy the Coyote Serenade. On my drive out, I rolled the windows down and I drove slowly until I was at the point that was just about closest to where the coyotes actually were. They were probably only about 200 yards or less off the road from here. Now, these sounds, recorded much closer to the source, are very crisp and clear, and you can hear in this some of the sounds that we heard half a mile away distorted and blended together that sounded a lot more like a scream. Just an interesting observation in how the forest will distort sound over a distance. I have recently listened to audio on a few other YouTube channels that have audio that to me sounds like a distant train horn. When I study it under a spectrograph, I see that it has a constant, steady, fixed frequency. It's always the same frequency. The sounds that you listened to earlier in this recording are biological in nature. You can hear them change in pitch. They ramp up and ramp down, and it's a quite different effect than a train horn. Oddly enough, the channels that have what sound like they're mechanical in origin, train horns and the like, don't want me to use their audio as an example of what a distant train horn sounds like. They want to believe that they have recordings of Sasquatch and don't want to be used as an example of what not to listen to. So one of these days I'm going to have to go out someplace where I can record a train horn and show you what that looks like on the spectrograph and why you need to use a spectrograph to look at the audio and try to determine if you're listening to something that's of human mechanical origin or that's biological in origin. Anyway, I am the Curious Cryptid, and we'll keep looking out there as long as we can hear something besides just water dripping in the rainforest.